Welcome to So Everyone Can. I'm Mitch McCartney.
I'm Tanner Downs.
And I'm Kelia Guevara.
You know, we're starting to, as we record this, we're starting to see ourselves come out of the pandemic. Hopefully, knock on wood. It sure appears that way. And if we haven't learned anything else in the last 12 to 15 months, I think perhaps as a society we've learned about the importance of mental health and the impact that our collective mental health has on everything that we do. Work, play, family, our interactions every day, even just going to the grocery store. Everything that we do requires a human interaction, and our human interactions really are dramatically impacted by our mental health. And we read about it in the newspaper every day. I think some people have kind of become a little numb to it, but it's going to be interesting to see as we come out of this pandemic how we might do things differently, how we might treat each other, hopefully, a little bit differently.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's going to be a really great conversation. I'm excited that we're holding space for it. And you're right, Mitch. I think it's been something that we've heard, you know, ad nauseum in the media. It's like
Mhm.
second to unprecedented times, right? Is this conversation around mental health, but I think the deeper understanding of how that impacts us, and Tanner, you started in January. Like, we've been in person. I've sat next to you in a chair once
Yep.
over this past year. So I'm excited to hear what Sean and Marla will speak to us about, how they've, personally, how this past year has been for them, and how it's been for their work, and what kind of lessons they've learned.
Yes, we are fortunate to have with us today Marla Smith, who's a behavioral health coach with Heartland Family Service, and Sean Stanek, who's a clinical supervisor with HFS, both of whom have a lot of experience. Um, they're going to talk about what they've seen in the pandemic and what what advice they have to the community, but they're also going to give us, I think, a unique perspective on what it was like to be a mental health practitioner during the pandemic, which I think is going to be really insightful. So when we come back from the break, Kelia will be talking to Marla Smith and Sean Stanek. Please stick around with us. We'll be right back.
Every year, June is celebrated as Pride Month. Heartland Family Service is proud to celebrate every diverse and unique person who walks through our doors or receives our services, including employees, clients, donors, and volunteers. We strive to support the LGBTQ plus community of employees and clients within Heartland Family Service through our employee resource group that provides educational events and trainings, through policy and procedure advocacy, and through our programs that provide affirming care to all Heartland Family Service LGBTQ plus clients. Heartland Family Service celebrates the pride of our LGBTQ plus clients, volunteers, employees, and the entire community during this important month and every month.
Thanks, everybody, for joining back with us. I am so happy to be here today with Marla Smith and Sean Stanek, two incredible members of our behavioral health team at Heartland Family Service. Marla Smith is a behavioral health coach working primarily in Southwest Iowa with the region there, providing coaching and support. She does incredible training, working on C3 de escalation and really meeting the needs of the most vulnerable in the population who need really specific forms of support. And she is a licensed mental health practitioner in the state of Nebraska and a licensed mental health counselor in the state of Iowa. Sean Stanek, our clinical supervisor, one of this clinical supervisor um, team members, He is working in our Nebraska behavioral health programs and also in our housing support team. And Sean is also a licensed independent mental health practitioner and a licensed mental health counselor and a licensed alcohol and drug counselor. He's got a lot of alphabet going on. Both of these uh, folks are dedicated professionals who are always seeking out new learning and ways to expand their skill level. And I'm so happy to have them with us today so that you can hear from them and their experiences and their expertise. So welcome, welcome both of you.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Thanks, Kalia.
So I want to talk first about what brought you here to this certain combination of, as I said, alphabetic letters behind your name to be um, in this field of mental health support takes something, a certain combination of things. And I'm very curious what that looked like for you. So, Marla, do you want to go first?
Sure. I like to tell people that I didn't choose this field. This field chose me. Growing up, I always was told that I have a very calming demeanor. I have a lot of knowledge, um, a lot of common sense, because we know common sense isn't always common. And so, no matter what I tried, even stepping outside of um, my own comfort zones, I always came back to this field. And I realized how much I enjoyed training and being part of somebody's growth and helping them achieve whatever that success is, whatever their definition of success is. And that is where I realized that I found my happiness and my purpose. So this field really just chose me.
And you listened to that, which is fantastic.
Oh, I don't think I had a choice.
Sean, how about you?
Man, okay, so I've got, well, everybody's journey is different, right? So psychology, sociology, all this stuff has been something that's always been really interesting to me. And I remember in high school being like, wow, that's pretty cool. And then I took a psych course in college. And for me, it's more about like a personal journey. Like in undergrad, I really enjoyed my psych research class, and I thought I would be a researcher. And then somebody said, well, hey, you talked about being a counselor way back when. Because through my own growth and being in and out of counseling since I was since the late 90s, I don't know, something like that has always been really interesting. And I find it really rewarding to work with people. And also, like, I coach people too. Like, a lot of us who get into this field have our own stories and our own things that we're trying to figure out. So that's definitely where I come at it from.
So I'm curious what kind of reflections you're having from this pandemic time. Maybe what you saw that really impacted you as understanding the power of your work. And I'm also curious, so I guess this is a twofold, perhaps threefold question, but what do you think is imperative to, like, an imperative lesson to carry forward? And is there anything that you learned now that you see as a necessary narrative change or change in the way you do your work? And whatever you remember from that question, is fine. Okay. The three of us work closely together on a lot of other things, so they understand Kelia's long and winding road of questions. That should be our theme for this episode. Long.
One of the things that I'm trying to figure out which question to answer first. One of the things that I learned first about myself was how much pressure I put on myself before versus now. Now it's, everything before, everything seems so critical. I had to do it right now, right now. Oh no, this person is in crisis. I gotta come up with interventions. And it was just this constant, gotta fix, gotta fix, gotta fix, gotta fix. And over the last year, as things really slowed down, and it seemed as if everybody had more time.
Mhm.
And so that allowed me more time to really come up with more, strategic type plans, to where it could be more impactful. And it's kind of like that, work smarter, not harder, you know. And
So
so I realized that before,
things
yeah,
hard to do. Yes.
yeah. I realized that, by doing so, I was figuring out things that were more impactful, that didn't require as much effort. And so there was more successes because of it.
Mm.
The other thing I recognized was, man, I am really efficient at a lot of things. Once I'm giving that time and that space, it's just like, wow, that only took me 15 minutes before. It took me, 2.5 days of me staring at this computer, glaring at it, wishing for it to explode. So maybe I can get a new one. So, yeah, so, that allowed me to really take stock of my time and
Mhm.
figure out what was really, the most important things and what I really, really loved about the work that I do. And so it let me be able to focus on that more and cultivate that more. So that's kind of the lesson that I learned. Um, there was a lot of self-reflection, and I had time to do that self-reflection without feeling so pressured to just keep going, getting, numbers up and seeing more clients and doing more trainings. So it allowed me to just be. And so as we're transitioning back, it's finding that balance between allowing myself to just be, but still being able to produce these amazing numbers and trainings and interventions, um, so that others can also start to learn on how to just be and recognize it's okay, we're all human. So I think that was one question, one answer. And I can't remember the other two questions.
I think I think you've answered them all.
Okay.
Um, Sean, reflections of the last year, any stories about what you recognize as the impact of your work, or the work of the team that you supervise, providing mental health
Mm.
lessons that you want to carry forward, and anything around that?
So just wanted to let you know that I'm taking notes. Marla, you have really great insights, and I want to make sure that I reflect on. So the impact of what the thing that comes up for me is that we can be flexible, and in counseling therapy land, as I call it, that there's this, for some folks, like a really big push, or uncomfortableness with doing telehealth therapy. And I found, for me personally, it can be just as effective, um, in that you can still have a big impact even if you're not in the same room with somebody. There are some different things about it, but I felt like I was able to even grow as a therapist and learn some new tricks. And I learned going forward too, just to be more human about it as well. I try to just show up for people, however I'm showing up, with the caveat of, like, I've got to show up for the client. But if I mess something up, or I can't find what I'm looking for to help them, or find a resource or something like that, I just let them see that. Like, I spilled coffee on my iPad a couple weeks ago during an eval, and had to, like, take a break to clean that all up. And all that's fine.
Yeah.
And I had to write down, Marla, just be idea. And I think that's something we continuously work with counselors that I work with, and teaching them with all the changes that are constantly happening in an outpatient program, and things that we have to do for funders, that it's okay. And we can just be and sit with that and learn to navigate those changes in the best way that we can.
Yeah, absolutely. And that humanity, that common humanity of, oh my gosh, my therapist is spilling their coffee on their laptop in a session. For me, I know the impact of that is that it breaks down that wall of distance of this person is better or smarter or whatever than me. And I'm here because I'm struggling and they never struggle because they're perfect. And that sense of isolation that can really inhibit us in such a deep way. Um, and when we're trying to care for our mental health and find support to feel better, that can be a big barrier, right? So I love
Mhm.
that story.
Yeah, I don't have the answers. I've just been on the path. And that's
Yeah.
kind of how I view therapy, is helping people along this path rather than coming from a expert stance.
So as we wrap up today, I was curious to hear from both of you. What would you like to say to the community around what are some of those signs and symptoms? What could people be experiencing right now that they don't think of as, anxiety and depression because they haven't heard a story? And how, if someone wanted to access some help, some conversation, how would they go about doing that?
Um, so some of the signs and symptoms of like anxiety and depression, especially going through this pandemic and all the changes that it's brought on so very suddenly, and then kind of leveled out and then brought on more changes very suddenly. Um, One of the major things is mood swings. Are you more emotional? Do you cry more? Do you cry less? Are you eating more or eating less? What's your motivation like? Do you find that you've lost pleasure in those small things that you used to love and you just don't want to do them anymore? Um, do you realize that maybe you're not as social as you used to be? Going out in public scares you. Um, those are some of like the common ones that I've heard people have told me lately, because the pandemic is still, we're still living in it. And even though we're thinking we're at the end of it, now that we've gone through that physical pandemic, now it's a psychological pandemic. And I don't want to go back to the way I was. I've grown, I've changed. And to do so makes my heart beat fast or sweating. Um, and that can really learn to a lot of burnout as well. Because it's, I've pushed myself and pushed myself, and now you're telling me to go back, you know, and I just don't want to. And I'm frustrated. And why isn't you're not feeling heard? Um, so those are the things that I've noticed. There's a lot of different places you can reach out. Um, we have our EAP. If you don't know the who your EAP person is, ask talk with your supervisor. Um, we have our own teams, the people on our teams. They're your first support system. Talk to a family member, talk to a friend, clergy. Reach out to somebody who's supportive of you, someone who you feel really listens to you and hears you and is there to help you on that emotional growth. And sometimes we'll give you a very hard truth if you need to. you know, the truth is hard to swallow, but those are the ones that truly care about you. Um, we have our ERGs. We have here at Heartland, um, the second and fourth Friday of each month, we have Real Talks that's hosted by Think Tank. And that's a great way for you to just come and just talk about whatever's on your heart or on your mind and, build a sense of community. Um, there's so many different support systems that you can reach out to. But really, if you start to notice that, maybe it's starting something small as start something, do something small each day that'll make you feel better. Maybe you take and say, I'm going to read for 5 minutes. I'm going to read one chapter and that's it. Or I'm going to start journaling. I'm going to journal 3 sentences. Or even something as small as, I'm going to make my bed today. I made my bed today, y'all. Something that just makes you feel better, that you feel like you accomplished something, no matter how small it is.
Yeah. Thanks, Marla. Will you take us into some of those signs and symptoms of depression? Because I feel like that's a really big one that, it's like so misunderstood the way it shows up in the body, or maybe what you're seeing right now that could help community members listening today kind of recognize, maybe expanding a little on what Marla had offered.
Yeah, Marla already hit on a couple of them. So um, depression can look like a lot of things. So changes in eating, like too much, too little, sleep, too much, too little, you know, um, that lack of motivation. And I can just envision, sitting there scrolling on your phone and you can't seem to get anything done or something like that. Or maybe I'm speaking too much from personal experience. You look around your house like, oh, I got all this stuff to get done, but I haven't done anything. Those kinds of things. Marla said, not getting pleasure out of the things you used to enjoy. And it can just kind of feel like a weariness and like a weight or like an achiness or just kind of like a ambivalent or a meh feeling. And you may not be able to put your finger on that. That could show up in the body as like fatigue or tiredness or sluggishness, I suppose. And I would say I think sometimes we don't recognize necessarily what's going on with us. We may not be able to label it as depression. We just say, well, I'm just tired all the time. Or living through this kind of a trauma, and or maybe other things that have happened to us too that can show up as just being anxious all the time or easily overwhelmed. See, anger is another thing to watch out for, because there's always something underneath anger. But for a lot of us, that was only a safe way to express emotions in our families coming up. People get anger, but it's harder to deal with, when you're sad and you're crying. We don't quite know what to do with that sometimes. So I remember back in the early days of my career, you'd look up, okay, what do we do for help with depression? So it's like try to sleep better, try to eat better, get some exercise. And here's like these 5 things that you can do. So those are like some of those little things. And if you find it hard to engage with them or kind of get them started, or you've been doing them for a while and things aren't getting better, or you're noticing like your reactivity to things keeps getting worse, like you're okay for a while, and then something happens, and then you're really overwhelmed. Maybe you get really upset. Maybe you just can't handle things, but then you calm down again. I mean, that's a good sign that it might be time to get some help. And you don't have to wait for things to get like super severe or hit like a rock bottom, or have some huge event happen in your family. But yeah, just that with things were a bit more difficult than they used to be, and the things that you did for self-care or tried to do don't seem to be working anymore. And that length of time could be a couple of weeks, it could be several months. And it can take a long time for people to reach out for help. And that's okay too. But it's important that you do.
Wow, this was great. I've learned so much. Thank you so much, both of you, for your unique perspectives and the work that you do in the community, and also the work that you do in your own selves. I mean, for me, that's definitely one lesson that the pandemic has taught me, is that the work that we do within ourselves changes everything. And we tend to think everything needs to be like Marla was speaking to, right? What we're giving, giving, giving. And yet, when we stop and really cultivate that space and that care and that room in ourselves, then it just ripples out and really has expansive potentiality to change our relationships, change our family relationships, our work relationships, and I love that. So I just appreciate both of you so much. Thank you for the work that you do that we've talked about, and the work that you do that we haven't talked about, and the beautiful impact that you're having in our communities with the work that you're doing. Really appreciate you both being here with us today on So Everyone Can, our podcast here at HFS.
Gather your foursome together to support a new dawn for survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. Join us on Friday, August 28th, along with our presenting sponsors, Pinnacle Bank and Arby's Panda Incorporated, to help drive out domestic violence and sexual assault at our 28th annual Safe Haven Golf Tournament at the Eagle Hills Golf Course in Papillion, Nebraska. Tee time will be at 8 a.m. Proceeds will be benefiting the Heartland Family Service Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault Program, including the Safe Haven Concealed Emergency Shelter to protect women, men, and children from violence. Teams of 4 can register for $500, and a variety of sponsorship opportunities are available for your business or organization. For more information, go to heartlandfamilyservice.org and click on Events in the upper right-hand corner. Please join us in being a part of this year's Safe Haven Golf Tournament. Let's teach individuals how to create a safe home so everyone can.
Welcome back to So Everyone Can, and Sean has been gracious enough to stick around with us. As you know, we devote the last segment of our show to a mindfulness exercise, which I think ties beautifully into the topic of mental health that we're talking about here today. Sean, first of all, before we do this, I have to tell you, my middle name is Sean, and you spell it the right way. I just want you to know that. For those that don't know, Sean should be spelled S-E-A-N, which is the Irish form of John, right? Is that
That's right, Mitch. Yes.
right? So good Irish names we've got here. Okay. So Sean's going to lead us in a mindfulness exercise. Take it away, Sean.
Okay. Thanks, Mitch. Okay. So we're going to do a short body scan practice today. So let's begin by just taking a moment to allow your body to settle into a comfortable position, wherever that might be. If you're sitting or laying down, you may close your eyes or keep them slightly open, willing the spine to lift and the shoulders to soften. So we're going to checking in with our bodies helps to settle the mind and to notice what physiological sensations and emotions might be present. Begin by taking a full breath in and a long breath out. Okay. Now bringing awareness to the top of your body. Focus on your head, face, neck, shoulders. Noticing any sensations, movements, any places of holding or tension. Sit with that for a few seconds. Now moving down to the arms and the hands. Now sensing the back of the body and the front of the body. Sensing yourself either in the lying or seated position. Feeling the contact of your body with the chair, or the cushion, or the floor. Now sensing your upper legs, your lower legs, and your feet. Noticing if there are any particular places that call out for attention, or places where sensations feel most vibrant or dynamic. Scanning to see if there are places where there is a lack of sensations, or only a very faint sensation. Now sensing the whole body with each breath. Finishing with a big, full, deep breath in and a long breath out. When you're ready, open your eyes and come back.
Thank you, Sean. Appreciate you leading us in that exercise today, and hopefully our listeners found that to be a moment of peace and mindfulness that they can experience in the middle of their day. And thanks to you, Sean, and to Marla for both being on the show and for what you do, not just for Heartland Family Service, but for the community at large. We really appreciate you being with us today. So Everyone Can is a podcast presented by Heartland Family Service. Heartland Family Service is located in Omaha, Nebraska, and if you want to learn more about our agency, you can find us at heartlandfamilyservice.org. You can also find us at soeveryonecan.org. Thank you for spending a little time with us today. Take care and be well.